It came in a cream envelope, thick with that glossy texture that makes your fingers feel poorer than they were before they touched it. I didn't open it right away. I just stood at my kitchen counter with the envelope resting on the rim of my chipped mug. Something in me already knew. The way it was addressed. Miss Eliana Reeves, not Eli, not Ellie, not even a scribbled heart from my sister like she used to do back when she borrowed my hoodies and left lip gloss stains on everything. Just formal, stiff, like they were trying not to touch me. I opened it slowly, like peeling off a wound that pretends it's healed. A wedding invitation. White and gold embossed lettering. Ivy script. The venue, Rose Hill Chapel. The date, June 17th. The RSVP card with "Kindly respond by May 2nd" printed in looping arrogance. Rose Hill. My venue, the one I had toured 2 years ago, walking the perimeter alone because Micah couldn't be bothered to take time off. I remember standing under that archway by the old fountain, imagining peonies lining the aisle. My aisle. I paid the deposit. I signed the contract. And when things fell apart with Micah, a quiet, cowardly fall, I asked the chapel to hold the credit. Just for a year. Just until I could breathe again. I guess that's when she swooped in. Juliana, my cousin. My mother's golden girl. The one with the perfect manicure and a smile that always felt like a warning. We used to be close. Or maybe I just thought we were. When I told her I was engaged, she squealed louder than my own mother. She sent Pinterest boards, scrolled dress photos with me late into the night. She was also the first to comfort me when Micah left. And now, she's the bride. At my chapel. Wearing my vision. The card didn't even say I was family. It said, "We are delighted to invite you as our guest." Guest. In a chapel I chose. At a wedding I was supposed to have. That night, I sat on my small apartment floor with the invitation beside an empty wine glass. I hadn't told anyone yet. Not my friends. Not even Mira, who I usually text everything to within seconds. There was something about this pain that felt unspeakable, too precise to explain. Like a needle stuck under the nail, not big enough to scream about, but deep enough to ruin your whole day. I didn't cry, not that night. Instead, I got up, walked to my bookshelf, and pulled out a navy leather folder, the one I kept the chapel paperwork in. I hadn't looked at it in months. The receipt was still there. $2,000 deposit. Non-refundable but transferable, it said. I had asked them to hold it under my name. I even emailed to confirm. I flipped through my inbox, fingers cold despite the heat of the apartment. There it was. We've received your request to pause the reservation. You'll retain the credit until June 2024. Just let us know when you're ready to reschedule, and we'll gladly apply your balance. I stared at the date. June 2024. Her wedding, June 17th, 2024. So they didn't just steal my venue, they used my credit, my money, and no one thought I might want to know. The next day, I didn't go to work. I called in under the weather, which wasn't untrue. I took a slow walk to the florist around the corner. Not because I needed anything, I just wanted to smell something real. The roses, the baby's breath, the earthy snapdragons. Something alive, and not curated. The girl at the counter was new. She didn't know me. That helped. I picked out a single white peony, the kind I had imagined holding down that aisle. When I got home, I laid it across the invitation and watched the petals begin to wilt in the afternoon heat. Then I drafted an email to Rosehill Chapel to info@rosehillchapel.com. Subject: use of credit under my name. Dear Rosehill team, I recently received notice that my reservation credit from June 2023 has been applied to a new booking. I need to confirm whether that balance was transferred with my permission or if it was done under another name without authorization. Please confirm who approved this credit transfer and when. Regards, Eliana Reeves. I didn't hit send right away. I stared at the screen, then at the flower, then back at the envelope. A part of me whispered, "Let it go." But another part, the one that remembered skipping dinners to save for that deposit, the one that stayed up nights Googling DIY budget weddings, that part refused. This wasn't about the wedding. It was about how easily they had forgotten me, how fast they moved on, and how they still expected me to show up, clap politely, and smile from a chair in the back. The response came at 11:12 a.m. the next morning. I hadn't even opened the curtains yet. I lay there on my side, half buried in yesterday's clothes, staring at my phone like it was some strange animal that had wandered into my apartment and decided to sleep on my chest. I knew it would come. I just didn't think it would come so quickly. Subject: use of credit under my name. Dear Ms. Reeves, thank you for reaching out. We can confirm that the credit from your 2023 reservation was transferred in February 2024, with written authorization submitted via PDF attachment signed E. Reeves. If this was not you, please let us know and we can initiate a formal dispute. Warmly, Margot Guest Services, Rosehill Chapel. I read that line 4 times. Signed E. Reeves. My fingers moved on their own, digging through folders, emails, memories. I never signed anything. I never sent a PDF, unless Juliana. She had access to my old planner once. She borrowed it when hers got lost during that ski trip. She'd taken it to jot things down. That planner had everything. Notes, login emails, even a scan of my signature from when I helped Dad with those utility forms. She would have known how to mimic it. I didn't even feel angry. I felt removed. Like I was watching it all from somewhere slightly behind myself, as if my body hadn't caught up to the betrayal yet. That afternoon, I visited my mother. She didn't know I was coming. I hadn't been back home in months, not since the holiday dinner where I brought a store-bought pie and got told, jokingly, of course, that real bakers don't come in plastic lids. She opened the door with that half-smile she gives strangers she doesn't trust. Oh. Ellie, you should have called first. I figured it wouldn't matter, I said, since I'm just a guest. Her face twitched slightly, a muscle near her jaw. I don't know what you mean. You do. She didn't deny it. She just stepped aside. Inside, the house looked the same and entirely different. New curtains, a new mirror in the hallway, a framed photo of Juliana and her fiancé on the mantel. The one I'd seen on Instagram, the "he finally put a ring on it" post. I stared at the mirror. It used to be mine, from my old apartment. The one I emptied out after the breakup with Micah. I had asked Mom to hold a few things in her garage until I found something more permanent. Now my mirror reflected back a stranger with dry lips and sleep-creased skin. I thought you should know, I said slowly. The venue credit? It was in my name. It was my money. And someone signed off pretending to be me. She looked away. Not guilty, just inconvenienced. Juliana said you told her you didn't want it anymore, that you were moving on. I said I needed time. Well, weddings don't wait. Forever, Eliana. You weren't using it. She was. It seemed wasteful. Wasteful. As if grief and patience were extravagances. As if I should have moved quicker. She started fussing with a tea towel, pretending to wipe down a counter that was already clean. That was her tell. When the truth got uncomfortable, she cleaned. You gave it to her, I said. She's getting married, Ellie. She's starting a life. I almost laughed. So I had no life? I was just... What? In storage. She didn't answer. She just smoothed the towel again and again and again, as if polishing her conscience. I left without taking the mirror. On the bus ride home, I sat by the window and watched strangers go about their lives. A girl walking a dog, a couple arguing at a crosswalk, a boy dragging a stick along a fence, sparks of rhythm in the silence. I wasn't angry. Not in the fiery, shout-in-the-rain kind of way. I was something else. A deeper kind of cold. Not because they stole the venue. Not even because they forged my signature. But because they assumed I would show up anyway. They counted on my politeness, my silence. They thought I would sit in the back row wearing a cheap smile and a neutral dress, clapping for the bride who borrowed my aisle. That night, I printed out the email chain with the chapel. I highlighted the lines about the unauthorized transfer. I drafted a new message. To info.rosehillchapel.com. Subject: Formal dispute of unauthorized. Credit transfer, dear Margot. After reviewing your response, I would like to initiate a formal dispute. I did not authorize the transfer of my reservation credit, nor did I sign any PDF form. I have attached my original confirmation and previous correspondence for reference. Please advise on the next steps to formally challenge the transfer and protect my legal rights regarding the misuse of my signature. Sincerely, Eliana Reeves. I didn't send it yet. I saved it to drafts, because I wasn't sure if I wanted the venue back, but I did want them to sweat, even if just a little. Even if all I did was remind them that I wasn't invisible. Juliana finally texted me. It came a week after I visited my mother, and 4 days after I hovered over the send button of my formal dispute email, at least 17 times without clicking. Her message was chirpy, effortfully sweet. Hey, Elle. Just wanted to check if you got the invite. We'd love to have you there. Also wondering if you'd be okay being one of the bridesmaids. I already picked out the dresses. Super soft lilac, so flattering on you. Let me know soon so I can confirm the fittings. XOXO. It was like reading a note from someone who'd eaten your lunch, then asked if you wanted to split dessert. No apology. No mention of the venue. Just a smiling assumption that I'd be honored. I didn't reply. I went silent. Instead, I clicked on the link she'd included. The bridesmaid dress was listed on some trendy wedding site, modeled by a blonde girl twirling in a field. It was $230. Satin, sleeveless. Barely enough fabric to justify a price that would eat up what was left in my account after rent and groceries. There wasn't even a size option. Just one marked ordered. She had already bought it. She just expected me to say yes. The next day, Mira came over. I hadn't told her everything yet, just pieces. Just enough for her to give me that look. The one she saves for betrayal of the quiet kind. We sat on my rug with half-eaten fries between us, cheap beer sweating on the coffee table. I finally told her about the chapel. "You're kidding," she whispered, shaking her head. "She used your deposit?" I nodded. "And your mom knew?" I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Mira leaned back, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath since the story began. "You know you don't have to go, right? Like, you really don't have to go." I let the word settle, but part of me didn't know. Because for so long, going along was how I survived. It's how I stayed in the room, in the family, in the photo. Saying no had always felt like lighting a match in a room soaked with kerosene. But this time the fire was already burning. Went to the chapel website again that night. Not to send the dispute, just to look at the bookings. They had an online calendar now. June 17th was highlighted in pale pink. Private ceremony, Reeves and Cartwright. Cartwright, that was his name. Juliana's fiancé. I couldn't remember his first name. Then, without knowing why, I clicked book a tour. I selected the week after the wedding, just for fun, just to see. There were open slots. I chose Tuesday. When it asked for a name, I typed Eliana Reeves, and when it asked if I was a previous guest, I selected yes. A few days later, a package arrived. I wasn't expecting anything, but I recognized the handwriting right away. Juliana's, large and curly. Each letter looping like it was trying too hard. Inside was the dress, lilac satin, unironed, still creased from shipping, and a note. "Can't wait to have you up there with me. You've always been like a sister to me, more than a cousin. I know things have been weird, but I hope this can be a new chapter. Don't forget your heels. Love, Jules." I stared at the dress draped over my couch, catching light like it was trying to be prettier than it was. It felt like a uniform, not of celebration but of submission. I didn't message her back, but that night I pulled the navy folder from the shelf again. Not for the venue receipt this time, but for something else I had stuffed in the back. My original wedding mood board. I hadn't looked at it in over a year. It still smelled faintly like the lemon balm oil I used to dab on my wrists before. Big decisions. The photos were curled now, edges fraying. A faint coffee stain on one corner. Peonies, a dove-gray dress, handwritten place cards, low golden lights over dinner tables. I looked at the color swatches I had chosen. Slate blue, cream, pale blush, not lilac. Never lilac. I ran my fingers over the torn edge of a magazine clipping I had saved. An image of a bride walking alone under autumn trees, veil trailing like smoke. That was the version of me I had dreamed about. That was the version of me they replaced. The next morning, I hung the dress on a wire hanger and took a photo of it by the window. The light made it look expensive, softer than it felt. Then I opened my messages, scrolled to Juliana's name, and typed one sentence. "Thanks for the dress. I won't be needing it." I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I blocked her. I didn't hear anything from Juliana for 2 days. Not a message. Not a knock at my door. Not even one of her passive-aggressive just checking in emojis. And somehow that was worse, because silence in this family was never neutral. It was a verdict. I had learned that as a child. How love was something you could be quietly disinvited from. How a seat at the table was always conditional, and the conditions were never said aloud. You only knew you broke them when your name stopped being spoken. So I braced for the shift. I waited for the fallout to begin. On the third day, a new envelope arrived. This time, it was thinner. No glitter, no script. Just plain cream with my name, printed across the center, tight letters, all uppercase. Inside was a single card. Kindly confirm your attendance by May 2nd. At the bottom, a checkbox. Accepts with pleasure, declines with regret. No personalization, no warmth, just protocol. Like, I was a formality now, a seat to be filled. I stared at the box for a long time. Then I got up, walked to the kitchen, and pinned the card to the fridge with a cracked strawberry magnet. I didn't check either box. That evening, Mira called me just as the sun was sinking low behind the buildings. You didn't RSVP, did you? No. Good, she said, a breath of relief in her voice. Because I was going to physically tackle you if you said yes. I smiled faintly. It's weird, though. Not going. It feels like they'll just say I was being difficult. They already think that. I know. Then you may as well make it true. I didn't go into work the next morning either. Instead, I took a walk downtown, somewhere with people who didn't know my name, who didn't expect me to smile politely and sit in the back. I ended up at a bookstore cafe, the kind with chipped mugs and dusty corners. The kind that smelled like old pages and new beginnings. I found a table near the window and ordered chamomile tea, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself imagine what my life might look like, not theirs. Not the curated gallery of Juliana's, wedding or my mother's forced decorum. Just mine. No timeline. No comparisons. Just space. When I got home that night, I found the bridesmaid dress still hanging by the window, its lilac sheen catching the last light of day. I took it down, folded it gently, and slipped it into the same navy folder where my wedding documents used to live. Then I opened a drawer, pulled out an old envelope and wrote in black pen, "Return to sender." I sealed it, placed it inside a paper bag, and set it by my front door. Tomorrow I would walk it to the nearest post office. No note. No explanation. Let her wonder. Then I opened my laptop, logged into my email, and finally hit send on the message to Rose Hill Chapel. Please initiate the formal dispute. I have attached a copy of my previous contract and verification that I did not authorize the transfer of credit. I will await next steps. Eliana Reeves, I didn't know what would come of it. Maybe nothing. Maybe just a whisper of discomfort in the wedding timeline she had so carefully constructed. But that was enough for now. A crack in the illusion. A breath of my own name returned to me. Later that night, I sat by the window in silence. The city was quiet. Somewhere, far away, Juliana was probably planning her bachelorette weekend, picking songs, assigning roles, practicing a speech about found families that wouldn't include me. But for the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like mine. I didn't send the RSVP, but someone must have sent it for me. 2 weeks before the wedding, a reminder email arrived, titled Final Headcount Confirmation. It was automated, soulless, probably sent to 100 inboxes. But it was addressed to me. Hi, Eliana. Just confirming that we have you listed as attending the ceremony and reception. Looking forward to celebrating together. No signature, no warmth, no question mark. Just another decision made on my behalf. I stared at it until the screen blurred, then deleted it without replying. I didn't need to write back. I had already answered. Kept to myself the next few days. I stopped checking my messages. I muted the family group chat, the one that had suddenly revived itself with bridal shower photos and blurry screenshots of table seating charts. Somewhere in the mess of texts, I saw my name, tucked into a corner of a photo Juliana's sister had posted. A folded card labeled, Eliana, table 12 near the back. Right next to the kids' table, if I remembered the layout of Rose Hill correctly, the one by the drafty window. Behind the cake table, not far from the exit. That's when I knew for sure they never intended to honor me, only to contain me. A few days later, I walked to the post office with the paper bag carrying the dress. The return line was short, just a man mailing birthday cards and an older woman with a crocheted scarf asking about stamps. I handed it to the clerk and said, "No note. Just return to sender." She nodded like it was nothing, but it wasn't nothing. It was the first thing I had mailed back to them in years. Not a gift, not a favor, just a refusal. That evening, I ran into my neighbor, Mrs. Janine, in the hallway. She was watering the dying fern that lived near the elevator, a ritual that was less about the plant and more about having something to care for. "Wedding coming up soon, isn't it?" she asked, her voice raspy from decades of smoking and gentle judgment. I must have looked surprised. She shrugged. "I saw the invitation in your mail pile a few weeks ago. You going?" I paused, then shook my head. "I wasn't really invited," I said softly. She gave a tight little nod. "The kind that says I understand more than you think." Then she patted my arm. "Well," she said, "I hope whatever you do that day, it's something kind. For yourself." I spent the next week doing just that. I didn't check my email. I didn't return the new text from Juliana. A hollow, last-ditch, "Hope you're still good to be in the photos." I took Mira up on her offer and booked us a small cabin upstate. Just 2 nights. No Wi-Fi. No forced conversations. I didn't tell anyone. Let them wonder. The morning of the wedding, the sky in the mountains was gray and clean. Mira made coffee in a chipped enamel pot while I sat on the wooden steps outside, wrapped in a knit blanket and silence. "Do you want to see?" she asked, holding out her phone. "See what?" She tilted the screen toward me. Juliana's wedding, live-streamed on a relative's Facebook page. Shaky, pixelated, narrated by a distant aunt with poor volume control. I looked for a long second, enough to see the chapel's stone archway, the flowers, the guests, all in pastel. Then I looked away. "No," I said. "Let's go for a walk." We wandered along a trail that cut through tall pines and crooked birch trees. The air smelled like wet bark and distance. It was quiet, not heavy, just whole. When we reached the lake, I sat by the edge and watched the ripples make room for every breeze. For a long time I thought healing would feel like winning, like being proven right, like being asked to stand in the spotlight and offered some kind of overdue crown. But it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like this, like choosing not to look back, like sitting on a quiet dock with someone who doesn't need you to explain. The silence. I never sent another word to Juliana. I never confirmed or denied my absence. I just stopped showing up for the role they wrote for me. The polite placeholder, the supporting character in someone else's story. Let them print the programs with my name. Let them explain the empty seat at table 12. Let them sit with it. I didn't owe them an ending. I owed myself a beginning. I didn't check social media for 5 days after the wedding, not out of strength, but something closer to self-preservation. Like how you don't touch a bruise when it's still deep purple, not until it fades into that sickly yellow where it stings less. But eventually, I looked. Not on purpose. It started with a message from an old friend, someone from college who must have seen my name tagged under a post. Didn't know you were at Jules' wedding. You looked beautiful. And just like that, I opened the app. And there it was, a carousel of curated happiness. Juliana in a veil too long for her frame, her husband stiff with nerves, their arms looped like they practiced in the mirror. Rows of guests in pale lavender, soft focus, glowing filters. The caption: "The day I married my best friend, 6/17, 24, Forever Reeves Cartwright." I swiped slowly. Not to torture myself, just to confirm what I already suspected. I wasn't in a single photo, not even in the crowd shots, not even a blurry silhouette in the background. But the bridesmaid photo? There was someone else in the dress, same lilac satin, same bouquet I had once imagined holding. It wasn't even a cousin, just a friend of hers from work, I think. Someone who looked wide-eyed and flattered to be included, like I used to look. Later, that night I opened the Navy folder again. I didn't know why I still had it. Maybe because it felt wrong to throw it out. Maybe because it was the last thing I had that proved I once imagined something beautiful for myself. I flipped past the receipts, past the original venue deposit, past the swatches and notes and hand-drawn aisle layouts. And there, tucked behind, the flap, was something I'd forgotten I saved. A photo strip from a booth at a craft fair Juliana and I had gone to 3 years ago. I had just gotten engaged. We were flushed with cider and sugar and too many free samples. In the strip, our heads were squished close. We had our arms wrapped tight around each other. In the third frame, she kissed my cheek. In the fourth, I pretended to be scandalized. It was the last time I remember her looking at me without calculation. I stared at it for a long while. Then I folded it shut and slipped it back inside. The following weekend, I got a letter in the mail. Not a card, not a text, an envelope, addressed in Juliana's handwriting. Inside was a single-page note. Thick, perfumed stationery. Lavender ink. Ellie, I don't know what happened. You could have just told me if you weren't coming. It was hurtful. Honestly, I saved a seat for you, but I guess you had your reasons. Still, I wish you'd been there. Jules, no apology, no acknowledgement. Just the polished wound of someone disappointed they didn't get to control the narrative. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. Weeks passed. Summer began to peel at the corners. Mornings got quieter. The sun less insistent. People moved on. So did I. I found a new apartment, small, a little too warm, but mine. I started drawing again. Not for work. Just on paper towels and margins and the backs of receipts. Mira bought me a second-hand easel from a street vendor. We laughed the whole way home about how it barely fit in her trunk. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had put on pause, waiting for recognition, for thanks, for someone to finally say, "We saw you. We chose you." But I didn't need choosing anymore. I just needed space. A month after the wedding, I received one final package. No return address. Inside, a stack of printed photos tied with ribbon. Juliana's wedding photos. At first, I didn't understand. But then I saw it. On the back of each photo, in small, neat script, was a caption, Juliana's handwriting. The moment we said yes. Mom wiping a tear. First dance. We messed up the steps. Table 12. I flipped that last one over. It was a picture of the back of the room. The table was empty. My name card still standing. Unclaimed. Framed by shadows and soft candlelight. Don't know why she sent it. Maybe guilt. Maybe hope. Maybe she just wanted me to know they noticed. That I wasn't just forgotten. I was missing. I placed the stack in the drawer with the rest of the folder contents. I didn't throw them out. Didn't look at them again either. Some ghosts don't need exercising, just quiet, just distance, just time. I thought the ache would fade by now. That with enough time, the sharp edges of that weekend would soften into something story-shaped. Something I could hold up and say, look how far I've come. But it didn't fade. It just changed shape. It folded itself into ordinary things, like the way I hesitated before RSVPing to another event, or how I now instinctively second-guessed any invitation with the words, hope you can make it. It wasn't pain, not exactly, more like a quiet recalibration of trust, like learning how to walk again on ground that once gave way beneath you. I ran into Aunt Celeste at the grocery store. She was always the kind of woman who moved with deliberate elegance, like she imagined herself being filmed at all times. Red lipstick at 10 a.m., pearls with a cardigan. I hadn't seen her since before the wedding. Eliana, she said, startled, her tone lifting like she'd bumped into a ghost. We missed you. She said it like a question disguised as a sentence. I gave a small, polite nod. I know. She adjusted her grip on the basket, full of overpriced olives and fancy crackers. Juliana was quite upset, you know. I'm sure she was. She said you didn't even respond, that you left the seat empty. I tilted my head. It was never my seat. She didn't reply. Just blinked, and that silence, that beat of confused stillness, was all I needed. I walked home slowly that afternoon, paper bag in hand, watching the wind nudge leaves across the sidewalk like secrets trying to find their place. Inside my apartment, I put the groceries away, lit the lavender candle on the windowsill, and sat in the same chair I had sat in the night the invitation came. And I thought about the names we carry. Guest, placeholder, difficult, overdramatic, selfish, words that aren't shouted but handed to you like polite favors, until you start using them on yourself. It took me years to realize the difference between being chosen and being convenient, and I wasn't convenient anymore. Later that week, I got a call from Mira. She had a gallery showing coming up, her first in 2 years, and she wanted help setting up the space. Nothing big, she said, just someone to hang with me while I pretend I know what I'm doing. I said yes without hesitation, not out of obligation, just because it felt right. I showed up early, brought coffee, helped her label canvases with trembling hands. There was no place card for me, no pastel dress, no table in the back, just me, just present. And when the first guests trickled in, strangers and friends and wide-eyed art students, I stood beside her and smiled without folding myself small. That night, after the showing, Mira and I walked to a late-night diner, still riding the warm hum of soft victories. She looked at me over her cup of black coffee and said, "You seem Quieter these days. I nodded. I think I've stopped explaining. She tilted her head, curious. Explaining what? Why I didn't show up. Why I stepped back. Why I chose peace over performance. I stirred my tea. It's not a story I owe anymore. I went home and opened my Navy folder one last time. Not to mourn, not to revisit, just to remove the last thing inside. The seating chart. I tore it in half, then again, and again, until it was confetti. I flushed it down the toilet like something that should never have been stored to begin with. I didn't need a back table anymore, or a dress that fit someone else's narrative, or an apology rewritten in lavender ink. I had silence, and it wasn't empty. It was whole. It was mine. Autumn arrived, gently. It always did in this city. Not with drama, not with fireworks, just a subtle shift in the air. The leaves outside my window turned copper overnight, and I started sleeping with socks again. Little things. Soft changes. I didn't think much about the wedding anymore. It didn't haunt me. It didn't echo. It had become a story I no longer told. Not out of fear, but because it no longer asked to be told. It just lived, quietly, in a drawer I had stopped opening. One morning, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. There was no greeting, just a photo. A baby in a white blanket. Eyes closed, fist curled. Then, a second message. She arrived last night. Her name is Eliana. I stared at the screen. No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. I knew it was Juliana. I held the phone for a long time, unsure of what I felt. It wasn't anger. Not quite. Not sadness either. Maybe something like distance. The kind that grows not because someone slammed a door, but because you both stopped holding it open. I locked my phone and placed its screen down. I didn't reply. A week later, I took the long train ride to the coast. Alone. It wasn't for a wedding or a reunion or a holiday dinner. No occasion. Just breath. I checked into a weathered inn with seafoam paint peeling at the corners and a window that rattled when the wind leaned against it. I brought a single bag, a notebook, a book I had read twice already. A scarf Mira knitted me, and I spent the weekend doing nothing. I drank tea from thick mugs and walked along the shoreline with no direction. I collected sea glass in my pocket and let the salt sting my lips. And one morning just before sunrise, I sat on a bench overlooking the water and wrote something in my notebook. Not for anyone else, not for closure, just because I had words again, and they were mine. I didn't become someone else. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't stage a reckoning or call out names. I just stepped out of the role they wrote for me. The seat at the edge of the table. The girl in the lilac dress. The placeholder in a photo she never appeared in, and I chose something quieter. Myself. I never told Juliana I saw the name. I never asked why. Let her think it was a tribute, a peace offering, a wound wrapped in a ribbon. Let her explain it however she needs to. I don't carry that story anymore. I carry my own. The one where I chose not to sit where I was expected. The one where silence wasn't surrender. It was survival. And the softest, strongest kind of revenge.